Hi everyone, we're here today to talk about Hill Coaching Company and most specifically the coaching that all three of us have received from Oliver over the last year or so. We were all really lucky to get invited to talk with Oliver and discuss our experiences because I think, I'm sure you will agree with me and you, Chris, it's been incredibly beneficial for all of us.
Yeah,
and it's just nice to be able to kind of come together and share how our experiences have been.
Yeah.
So James, why did you decide to approach Oliver to have the coaching?
Oh, that's almost a no-brainer for me. I've had some success while I've been studying and in my working life, but I was just not really fulfilling any of my potential at all. Everything I wanted to achieve I didn't seem to be able to achieve it, particularly for the 2 years before I started working with Oliver. And it just came to the point where I was so miserable, so anxious, so low on confidence that I didn't really see any version of my life that was really the direction I wanted to go in.
Mm-hmm.
And so something had to change. I tried all the I'd call them kind of fads at the moment, of the mindfulness and all the various apps you can get on the iOS and all of that, and none of that was working. I was in a position where I was considering going back to a career I really didn't want to do because I felt like I didn't have any other option. And then I started working with Oliver, and it was just completely life-changing. And for me, it's been the difference of continuing on a path where I'm completely not in control of my life,
Mm-hmm.
to going on a path where everything I want to achieve feels achievable.
Yeah.
And all of that comes about because of just simple shift in perspective, simple shift in the way I think about the world,
Mm-hmm.
which has been coached by Oliver, which is, I would say, is just completely life-changing for me. And I'm not just saying this, I genuinely, I tell everyone about this. This is a genuinely life-changing experience for me.
Absolutely.
And has changed my outlook on the rest of my life, really.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is I really relate to what you're saying about being in a kind of situation of slight chaos, in that you feel like you've been building towards something, but it's not quite happened in the way you expected, and you kind of feel like maybe it's time to just throw the towel in and go back to what feels like a very easy, comfortable option, but actually it isn't. You're not that far away from the situation you want to be in. You just need to have that kind of coaching perspective to help you get past some of those stumbling blocks. Chris, how did you kind of approach it? What was your sort of initial work with Oliver like?
So I met Oliver at a networking event a few years ago, and we've been collaborating on the social digital side of things anyway, and I'd engaged with Oliver because I'd describe myself as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
So an entrepreneur, but you're in the system, and one of the issues that I face in my organisation is potentially disagreement in culture or the way that things work, and I'd felt like I'd hit a ceiling in terms of what I can do to progress myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I approached Oliver, I was kind of like, I need something, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know what I'm motivated by. I would describe myself as a motivated person anyway, but I felt like I'd hit a ceiling, and since engaging with Oliver, I've kind of smashed through that, and I'm able to open up numerous opportunities for both myself and my organisation that I work for as well. So that was why I started, and I don't regret it. It was incredible. It's been incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to echo that. Now, Oliver, when you have kind of three people who, we're all creatives in our way, and we've all come to you at a sort of pivotal point in our careers where something isn't quite working as it should. What's the kind of situation for you where you start to unpick that with us?
So I think what these three have all got in common is I could see the talent and potential in all of you, and I suppose my natural instinct is to have the initial frustration that things aren't quite working the way they should be, and whatever the various things were. I've experienced all their services, so first of all recommend them strongly because you all provide things for me, and that was before they became clients. But I could then, getting to know them, realise there were things that weren't quite right, and my coaching is all about helping people unlock the better versions of themselves. It sounds corny, but that is actually the purpose of it. So I was able to quickly identify that you had talents, you were responding in the right way, because I made this coaching arrangement to quite a few people, and not everybody passed the tests. They didn't necessarily do the basic things that I was asking them to do, which meant that they were actually going to work under this arrangement. But you guys did, and there were a few other people that obviously managed it as well. So I knew therefore that I'd identified the talent, and then I was able to present you with a way of better understanding it, because that's the really important point here. I gave you guys no real direct guidance, did I? I just gave you access to information that's out there. There's information that is freely available to anybody to use, to understand. It's on the internet, it's through books. You can buy access codes for various personal development assessments. It's all there. What I'm able to do is point people in the right direction, and it would appear over time you guys are finding that, along with people that I work with, really, really transformational. That's the aim. That's the point.
I think it's also the accountability though, and it's having someone that you can talk about your week with who is just able to cut through the crap in many ways. You know, and we do that a lot, don't we? Where you check back and you say, well, actually, is that really true? Is that really? Can you not go and do that piece of work yet because you feel like you can't do it yet? And that's really useful. It's just someone, just to pull you up all the while.
I got banned from the way I talk about myself sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that because of the way that my sense of humour is quite self-deprecating, and trying to kind of manage that and stop making that kind of pervasive across everything I do and say, I didn't realise what an impact that was having. Now today's not a good example because I've done it a couple of times, but I think being more mindful about that has been a really important part of my sort of coaching. And I think the other thing I really liked is the Slight Edge tool, which we've been using with different things.
Incredible.
Chris, have you been using the Slight Edge as part of the work you've been doing?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been this kind of this base layer to everything that I do in life that I didn't even know existed. And it's fascinating the way it works. And I think that once you have Oliver specifically looking after you and having him as a business coach, you discover this inner layer that you never really had. So every day you kind of go +1 straight away.
Yes.
I think it's a really important thing to have in your armoury in terms of both resilience and excelling in your career. 100%, it's incredibly useful.
Do you feel like, because you strike me as someone that's really confident, is that confidence very innate in you? Do you is that quite a natural thing? Because one thing with working with Oliver, like my confidence has really built, and I was in a meeting the other week where someone really challenged my price, and normally I'd have folded like a deck of cards in that scenario, but my confidence was such that I was like, well, no, I've got 15 years of national press experience. What you're getting for the price I'm offering you is cheap at half the price, and got that confidence to say that in a scenario where I never would before.
Well, I don't know what James would say, whether he's got a different kind of main takeaway, but the thing for me is, the confidence comes easy walking in the room speaking to people, but I think what's highlighted here is that it doesn't really matter what your main skill is. Oliver can work with you. So whether you're a high-end C-suite exec or you're kind of a technician, whether you're in management or leadership, for me, going out doing biz dev is easy, but for me, sometimes doing the detail and organisation behind the scenes is a little bit more challenging. So that's something that Oliver has worked on for me. So being a relatively new manager, which is something that I know Oliver's said to me before that he specialises in, being a new manager, you get chucked into the role and you just get, well, there you go. You've got 4 people to deal with, and you've got to hit your KPIs and targets. Good luck, Sonny Jim. And that's really daunting. I think that it sounds a bit corny, but one of the things that Oliver said to me before is everyone needs a coach. And I didn't get that at the beginning, but I cannot emphasise how much everyone genuinely needs a coach, because James nailed it straight away. It's accountability. All of this stuff is available, and I've had conversations with Oliver, and I'm not going to lie, where I've had a bollocking, I've had a telling off, but actually I've needed that, and a lot of people might find that scary, but actually I think if you can open up and show that vulnerability to someone like Oliver, he can really coach you and help you excel. And I think that's been one of the things that's helped me, is there's too many people just dragging through life and not really choosing to excel themselves and being brave enough to open up. But if you're brave enough to open up to someone like Oliver, he can push you in a different direction. I think there's a massive problem, I think, to be honest with you, in the coaching sector, that there's this stigma of it's a bit patronising or it's way too fluffy. And for me with Oliver, it's been very black and white. a really healthy dosage of common sense.
Yeah.
And as I keep saying, just someone being there saying, did you do that, Chris? Or have you spoken to that person yet? Or have you opened up to that person? Or have you dealt with that problem? And it's just someone, I think James started to allude to it, there's having an outside viewpoint, because you're just in your bubble. Whether you like it or not, you're always in your bubble, right? And I think that when you have a coach that comes in and works with you over a course of 6 months, it's a long time, and it's an investment. But once you invest that time and that money into it, you can then all of a sudden realise, if you have someone looking in all the time saying, actually, I think that might be wrong, Chris, or what about this, or have you tried that? And just like a piece of graphic design or video work, or it's a blog or some social media, it's always good to have an extra pair of eyes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I found that tremendously beneficial.
And going back to you as a manager as well, you're responsible for bringing those people on, and you're responsible for their happiness and their ability to engage in the work. And if you have no idea of how to manage people, you need to be managed first to learn those skills. And
100%.
you need to have the right. I mean, every manager I've had is probably not been the best manager I would want to have. So I would love to be managed by you, following the fact that you've been coached by Oliver.
James.
So it would be really interesting to see how you in a manager role, before and after.
Absolutely.
I just think a lot of corporate traditional organisations with that classic structure, that organisational structure, I think if they're able to just look on the outside for a minute and get that external viewpoint, have a coffee or a conversation with Oliver, and I think that it can just really open your eyes to the wider world. And there's a lot of stuff that Oliver knows, like research, from international research, businesses that are thriving in America, for example, right now, and we can learn a lot from them. I know us British people don't like admitting to that sometimes, but we really can.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really modern, innovative tactics that you can use to really help your team mould and also excel to the next level.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean that's the point. I like coming on two little bits that are really key there. First of all, that whole idea that everyone needs a coach. So first and foremost, without realising it, Chris, with his new 4 direct reports, is coaching.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean he's coaching well if you're not having any support, because they're learning from you. It's learned behaviour, they're observing how you do things, they're following your lead. And the second thing is the information that's already out there. So you referred to the book, The Slight Edge, Jeff Olson. It's my number one. It's my absolute all-time favourite rather. And big shout out to Neil Foley for bringing that into my life, because the reason why it is a great book, I'm not going to undermine it, but it's perhaps not the best book out there. But it's the mindset that it sets you up for. The fact that it gets through the point about doing things consistently over time, for a period of time, consistently and sustainably, is going to have an impact on you. And not doing it tomorrow isn't going to kill you, but not doing it for a sustainable period of time is going to end up being a problem for you. Equally, if you do things positively over time, it's going to have an impact. And it's the book that I now start with everyone. And it's one of the tests. If someone's not prepared to read the book properly, then we don't continue to work with one another, because if you can't start making those small steps, then what I do is not going to work for you.
Yeah.
But that actually is just a really sensible way of doing it. The highlight that I would take away from that is there are loads of these sorts of books out there. And now for me, I'd say if I've got one that works, why wouldn't you take the one that I recommend? But there's loads. The point is, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
How are you going to action it? And that's it. You call it accountability. I actually think the way that I start my questions, you come up with the answers yourselves. And that's the true point of coaching, is you have the answers, you have the abilities. And what we do for the questioning and the conversations we have, no matter how long it takes, get you to realise it. Because I could sit here and tell you how to do things, and you'll forget it the minute you walk out of your session. It's the problem that we have with training. There's some amazing training out there. Companies spend thousands of pounds having wonderful workshops delivered by amazing people, and no plan of how to implement that the day after. And there's a lot of stats to back up. The next day, 40% of what you've learned is gone.
Yeah.
Within the end of the week, 95% of what you've learned is gone. Crazy.
We've all been doing a sort of little bit of accountability each day with sending you our kind of daily thoughts on our WhatsApp video, which I don't know about you guys, but that was like my worst nightmare to start off with, and I really struggled, but I was so committed to trying to do everything and show up and be there to do these little bits that I have done them. Oliver, how has that been for you? I mean, obviously the sheer joy of seeing our 3 faces every morning, I mean, it must be such a treat. But aside from that, how's that helped with coaching?
Well, to be honest, I have to credit James for this one, because I asked him to do something one of our first coaching conversations, and he completely ignored what I'd asked and presented me with what ended up being a video diary. And I thought, hang on, this isn't half bad. because he was basically doing the whole gratitude journal on a video.
Yeah, said I was really miserable.
Yeah, it wasn't the most fun to watch, but that's the real point of it, being able to check in with you, because we would meet roughly weekly for this 6-month period, and certainly 3 times a month, but that feels like quite a gap. By having these videos and being able to feed back on what I'd seen and what you said, and we structure it in a certain way, not only was it useful to see how you were coping with things, it was also useful to visually understand the difference. You could actually see the weight being relieved from you over that period. I mean, if I go back now and check the first video, especially of James in January, as to what we have now, and every so often there's a little slip.
Yeah.
But in the main, there's just a difference around him that I can't really explain. So for me, the power of seeing it, knowing what I'm walking into at our next session anyway, being able to intercept you before the next session as well, when there's some stuff that's coming across that maybe, I don't know, you're being a bit more self-deprecating, and I can challenge you on it, and you know you're not going to get away with it. Or if there's certain actions that I'm not hearing are being done that I can hold you to account for. Really powerful for me. I hope you guys have also found the confidence you've got from it, because the one thing I take away is it is no trouble anymore.
Yeah, it's not.
Just bang, the videos are out in no time at all. There's no worry. You feel comfortable looking into the camera, looking away from the camera. It's like I'm there having a conversation. And that, for you, with the digital age, being able to sit in front of a camera like that anyway is pretty powerful, isn't it?
It's very modern. It's very modern coaching. I think one of the things that you quite rightly said, Oliver, there is your interception, or I would probably class it. You definitely have a more proactive rather than reactive way of coaching, and I think everyone naturally has peaks and troughs in their career, but the one thing that I've noticed is when I've started to maybe veer off a little bit, you've pushed me back on track again. Yeah. I think that's super important, and for me it's definitely been like a boost button for both myself and my business as well. So when I've started to go down, and Oliver's noticed on my daily vlogs, he's gone, hang on a minute Chris, this isn't good, and he's just nicely nudged me in the right direction, but in the right way. And I think that is really important to say. And if wherever you're watching this, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube or whatever, I think it's just really important to know that you're never too good for this, because there's been some like nuggets in it for me, particularly where I've gone, wow, that's a real light bulb moment for my career. And I would just highly advise just engaging, even just for one coffee, to realise, because it has literally changed my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think back to that idea of kind of reflective practice, I think for the coaching for me as well, with those daily vlogs, like hearing myself verbalise worries or wins or whatever the kind of situation has been really helpful to me, because I think you can think all these thoughts, but unless you verbalise it, I think sometimes it doesn't quite sit with you. And so actually having that practice every day of verbalising how things are has been really useful in terms of the reflective learning with reflective practice with the coaching that you deliver. And I think as well, just having the space to sit down with someone and say, this is really not working and I really need to unpick it, and then having someone help you unpick it is so important.
And also you're getting those vlogs when we're in those moments, so it's completely raw. So if you've had a bad day and you come home and you're talking about it, you know, it would never be the same if a week went past and we were describing a rubbish event to you. So just to have that real time feedback is really useful.
How long was your longest vlog?
Oh, I've done a 10-minute one.
10 minutes? Chris, what are you?
I'm quite short and sweet.
Yeah,
maybe like a 3 to 5 minute, but
yeah,
it's not a chore. That's the thing. Everything I've done for me, but for Oliver, but for me, it's just been easy. When Oliver said to me, Chris, this is a once a week gig, you're going to be doing daily vlogs, I was like, cool, blimey, how am I going to fit this in? But as soon as it twigs and you realise that everything that you do is like tremendously beneficial, it just feels easy. The thing for me is, this is a bit brave, I'm going to be a bit brave here, I've met business coaches before and they bore me to tears. They do, I'm sorry, but they do. But the thing with Oliver is, he doesn't bore me, he keeps me engaged, it's a modern approach to it. I think that sometimes as someone that's going through coaching, you can feel like it's a bit tedious, and you're writing things to please them, and you have to put on a bit of a face.
You also might not necessarily fully trust them, that they know what they're talking about. I feel that way a lot.
Yeah, and that face-to-face thing, whether it be a digital video vlog or whether it be a face-to-face meeting on a weekly basis, there's no hiding. It's real straight up, there's no hiding, and I think that it kind of you cut through the bullshit, you do, and you get straight to the point. And for me, that's really, because I personally love just getting the why immediately, and I love knowing where this is taking me, and I love getting the takeaway ASAP and then backing it up. Whereas I think I've done like a lot of corporate courses before, and if it's too fluffy and there's not enough substance, I'm like, come on, give me what I need, and Oliver's done that. So.
And I think as well, I think your background in the work that you did before you became a coach also is really useful as part of the skill set that you bring to us, because I really trust you because I know that you understand business and you've worked in business and you've been through a lot of the things that I'm kind of facing now. And so there's the coaching element to it, but there's also that really important experience that helps to build the trust even more.
Yeah, well, I think it's important. Everybody has a view on coaching. I'm not really interested in other people's views. I just go with what works. And I think in life there are experiences you've had that it would be crazy not to share. So at that point it's important to just step back in and say, look, actually I have a perspective on what you're talking about. Rather than you discover it, would it be okay for me to break the coaching code and just start talking to you about how I see things and how things have worked for me? Why wouldn't you give that? This whole idea of you can't tell anybody anything is obviously a little bit crazy. And also I must really stress that the reason that Kate finds that powerful, and the same for you guys, is that I've made lots of mistakes. This isn't Kate saying, wow, we look up to you because you've done all these amazing things. Yes, of course, it's success, but what I bring to the coaching session when I make these interventions is because I'm noticing you're heading down a path that I've already been unsuccessfully. And that's the point. There's a learning there. Why wouldn't I share that now? And then you can take from it what you will. You don't have to act upon it. But if I have information, why would I store that up? Why would I not give the fillets of information right away? Why wouldn't I do that? And I think that's probably what you're alluding to there, is there are many situations where I've managed big teams, small teams, big companies, small companies, all these things. There's been experiences that relate to the things that you're talking about. So yeah, there's the extra bits, which I am lucky that I've had that experience, and many coaches haven't, but it doesn't also mean that others can't. It's how they go about it, it's how they get ultimately to that better version of you. That's the core. And if we're doing that, and if a coach is succeeding in doing that, then they're a good coach. That's the crux of it.
Definitely. And I think as well, another thing that has meant a lot to me is that Oliver's a bit of an ambassador for me out in his network, which is, huge to have somebody, that's going out there and being a bit of an ambassador for you. It just helps you to kind of trust that you're as good as you're hoping you are, because I don't know about you guys, but I really suffer with a bit of sort of self-esteem and am I good enough and all this. But when you've got someone that you trust and understands what is good and what isn't, backing you up and being an ambassador for you, that's a really important thing.
Yeah, that's interesting, and it's kind of the concept of the imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Where you think actually, and what's been interesting for me on that is that I've just completely shifted the way I think about what I do, and in particular with some of the reading that you've suggested to me, that I'm not now thinking about whether I'm a videographer or not. I'm thinking about actually what's a conduit for communicating the messages of companies, and that just completely, complete shifting perspective completely changes how I think about myself and my abilities, and it just fills me with much more confidence. And I certainly was not in that place before we started working together. So
yeah, I agree.
I think that's another important point, is to highlight that point again about how much information is out there already. So one of the things I hope you guys will appreciate is I don't reinvent the wheel. I've got no wacky little tricks and tools. I don't try and con you into doing anything. There's information out there that I think is imperative to your development, and if you aren't aware of it, I put it your way and help you absorb that content, and we check how it's sat with you. We make sure that you don't just read it and then forget about it, or watch it and ignore it. We make sure there's some actions around it, which is how you then come up with these amazing ideas. Because again, if I was to say, James, you can't think of yourself as a videographer, you're out there doing all these wonderful things, you might hear it, but it wouldn't be yours, you wouldn't own it. But you came to that discovery yourself and completely transformed your thinking around your business. It's changed for you. It's the same, you've both had exactly the same sort of experiences in your own field. That's the power. And if you're not getting that out of coaching or your managers or your own business, you need to have a think about that, because if you're not able to change your thinking about what you do, something's not right. But the information's out there. This isn't hard. It's been hard in terms of time commitment for you, I suppose, but in terms of the discoveries, they've not been hard to come across, have they?
No, that's
as long as
true.
you've done it.
And I think actually if we dial right back to kind of the beginning of the coaching journey, where we kind of do the Gallup Clifton Strengths assessment, when I first got that report back and read it, and it resonated with me, some of the stuff, particularly, knowing my number one talent was empathy, and realising where that was benefiting me in life and where it was seriously not benefiting me. If you dial it right back to there, and I read that report, and that report was not freely available to me, but it was there and I could access it quite simply, that alone wasn't going to be enough to help me turn those talents into strengths. I'm really interested, what's your number one?
I can't remember, if I'm honest.
What about you, James?
My number one is responsibility.
Is it? Oh wow, okay.
Which was very interesting because I had absolutely no idea that it would have been responsibility. But then there was definitely a light bulb moment when I got that report and I saw the five top ones, and I thought, oh wow, this is like my DNA on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And suddenly you can think back to your whole life and think about all different scenarios you've been in, and actually how your strengths perfectly aligned with those particular scenarios that meant that you were, and also exposing the things you're not so strong at, things that, and we could talk about motivational maps as well, things that demotivate you, and how the scenarios you were in when you were unhappy are perfectly aligned with the things that are completely demotivating.
It's not star signs, is it? It's not,
No.
It worked. I think I remember mine now. Mine was Woo.
Yes, that makes perfect
Mine
sense.
was Woo.
I was going to come and do an intervention because what it was, it wasn't your number one that gave you the most challenge. It was one, I think I was about your third and fourth was Woo, which stands for winning others over.
Yeah.
And Chris's need to win everyone over was a strength because he could do it. But when it wasn't going well, it would cause you a huge amount of stress and anxiety.
I was taking things too personally.
That's the same.
So,
because I've got Woo in my top 5 as well. So it is a real curse on.
It's not fluff though. I think James nailed it. Like James absolutely nailed it. It's not a case of just giving you a thing and it's like, oh yeah, great, thanks for that. Because one of the things that I've really benefited from is not just knowing it for myself, but also now I can see those strengths in other people.
Yes,
and therefore
definitely.
I can spot conflict happening in the workplace, and I can navigate and push people away from it if I need to in a leadership role. I can work out if someone's a technician, how do they work? How are they conflicting with that person? Because what is that person motivated by? What is that person probably motivated by? And that's why organisations should get Oliver in to just get the motivational map sorted, and then your team cohesion is absolutely nailed. And probably what you'll find is some people aren't suited to the roles that they're actually in, which is a bit of a reality check, which is super true. But also again, why wouldn't you at the recruitment step, before you even get anyone in, why don't you put them through a motivational map process so you know what they're motivated by?
Definitely.
Because they might not be right for the job.
And if you've got a big team of people and you've got a manager in charge of all those people and they're completely in the wrong sort of demotivating role for them, what does that mean for your team? What does that mean for the whole business?
Huge knock-on effect in time and money.
Well, you highlight a huge point and a massive challenge that we have in bigger businesses about this whole promotion of people. So what I'm often finding in established companies is managers who aren't, not only are they not suitable to be managers, they didn't want to be managers, but that was the way that we had actually at a meeting just this morning, we were talking about hierarchies, weren't they? And this whole point that they were never suited and never right to be a manager, but that was the only way that they could see that they could progress. And they're now in a position where they don't get to do what they do best every day, and probably part of that was not looking after and managing people, and now they're being suddenly given 5-10 direct reports, and no support, and no training. But if you'd have just taken an assessment, this would have been painstakingly obvious. And the one you're referring to, Clifton Strengths, you can get it for $49.99 online. There is no excuse to not find this information out. You know, for a company with a reasonable budget, it's, if you've got 40 people, what's it going to cost you? Roughly $2,000, which converts around about 1,700 quid at the minute. It's unacceptable that people aren't doing this. Then how do you interpret it? What can you do with it? But there's a load of information in that report anyway, and there's plenty of people who can support you through that. Obviously, I'm one of them. I can't help everyone, but everyone can take that assessment.
Yeah, that's so true.
There's simply no excuse.
It's interesting because I've worked for a lot of big publishing companies, and one in particular that I still work for, over the last few years has been going through its own kind of epiphany really about establishing a strengths-based culture within, and this is a like multinational huge publishing company that only recently has come to this and come to understand that this is the way to and their productivity and profits have both lifted because of this new culture. And that's something that I think people don't understand when they maybe think about coaching, is that the coaching that you do has a very direct effect on the bottom line. It is about productivity, it is about profit.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the vision for me, is to getting that message out there. I mean, I often joke about it, but Facebook use that exact same tool for every single person in an organisation with the greatest respect. It's good enough for them, it's good enough for every single person watching this video. End of story. There's plenty of other bad news stories around Facebook, but the culture of the company is not one. And then I hear about things like Apple as well, and people talking about how its culture is cultish, and I actually lap that up. That's wonderful, because if you're saying that, you obviously left because it wasn't for you, and that's fine, you left. Don't run it down though, because ultimately there's a lot of people there who live and breathe the way that they do things, and certainly in the past under different management that was an amazing place to work. So culture is king, and this is a tool that starts you on the path of making that work, and why you wouldn't when you now know it's available is beyond me.
And what do you say to businesses that kind of think, well, we're sort of mid-tier businesses, maybe we don't really have a massive budget for training and development, maybe this would be a little bit too expensive, and making those kind of excuses because they don't see themselves as being a good fit for this kind of help. What would you say to them?
So there's a couple of things. First and foremost is you don't have to start it with a whole sweeping change for an organisation. Pick a team and let someone like myself come in and prove to you how it's going to work. Don't start at the top level. Start with a team, perhaps one that's more challenging within your organisation, and just see and get the honest feedback from the people involved. That would be the first thing that I would do. The second thing is about looking at the increase in productivity and profitability. So I can say with confidence this will see an increase in the productivity, which will lead to an increase in profits. So this is all fairly boring stuff. But when I tell you that profitability might go up as much as 8-9%, ask your financial director what that would mean for your company. And what I'm sitting here saying is, with the existing resource, all you need to do is invest the equivalent of what's probably the average cost of your full-time equivalent, maybe 1.5 full-time equivalents. You can unlock that increase in profit through working with the existing resource. Let your finance director tell you what that means. Why wouldn't you explore it?
Depends how much you value your business, though, Oliver, because at the end of the day, if you don't value this sort of investment, which is future-proofing your business, then do you care about your business as much as you're saying?
It's short-term versus long-term, isn't it?
And also, do you care about the people that work for you? Because actually, you do need to care about the people that work for you, because they are the most important asset in your company, because they're the people that can make or break your company. Doesn't matter how amazing your product is or your service is, if people aren't delivering that to the best of their ability, then you might as well go home now.
Well, that's why I'm here doing what I do now, and the reason I've moved away from some of the bigger family companies that we've got, and a career in the public sector before that, because this is something that is out there and not enough people know about. Not enough people are delivering it in a way that businesses also understand and get it. As I said before, many people are delivering amazing workshop packages, and they're great. I'm not criticising the delivery of the packages. I want the answer to the so what now bit. And then I've got people doing executive coaching, which is fine. I have no problem with it. But again, so what? What's that going to do? That's aimed around the individual. How are they actually improving so that person becomes a coach? Because that's what we need. We need more and more people with a coaching mentality. And that's what I hope that you guys have now got. You've got ways and tools for yourselves, but you now also have a way that you will communicate differently from now forever with anybody who is ever around you.
Right? Absolutely. And finally, just to kind of wrap things up, what has been the key takeaway for you, Chris?
There's been so many. Honestly, not just saying it. 3 light bulb moments, particularly. I think the slight edge has been tremendous. There's stuff actually outside of the work bubble that you just wouldn't even realise existed, but actually it's those small positive habits that can make a tremendous benefit in your career as well. That's been one thing that I'd say straight away. I think the thing that I've taken away for me personally is I've realised that actually I need to be more of an active listener. That's really helped me. My my sales have increased. They've gone through the roof since working with Oliver in terms of new generated business in. So clearly my listening is working. And I think as well, just for myself, so far I'm 25. So sorry if anyone's watching that's a little bit older than that. And I think so far I've had quite large peaks and quite large troughs, and now if I was to visualize my graph, it's always just steadily going up, and that's been the key thing for me, is just that momentum. I've not really ever fallen off the train. I'm on the train and I'm going now. So that's been the main takeaways for me.
That's awesome. How about you, James?
Well, for me, it's I can think. I mean, every session I always left completely revitalized, inspired, and energized for the rest of the week. And I was very much always looking forward to the next session to have that feeling of, yes, I can achieve anything I want to achieve. And then every session always really helped me. But for me, there was definitely a light bulb moment where we were sat and we were having a session, and my world shifted massively, where it was 2 years of thinking, just everything I couldn't put my finger on was just crystallized almost in 1 or 2 sentences. And for me, that was just the complete revolution, which, along with every other little revolution on the way, just changed my life for the better.
That's fantastic. I think for me, the work we've done around confidence, imposter syndrome, and focus, which is the trouble is, I like to do many things at the same time, and that does not work as a strategy. And I'm learning tips and tricks to kind of really manage that very natural way that I do things. So all of those things, those little slight edge practices as well, have kind of contributed to this personal revolution. I think it is, those words might seem dramatic, but actually that's how it feels, is like a personal revolution. And I'm really excited about what's ahead in a way that I wasn't when I started this. I was frightened about what's ahead, like, oh God, what's ahead now, what's it going to be next, and why can't I just go back to my nice comfortable job in publishing, but I don't feel like that anymore, and that is definitely thanks to all of us. So that's all good.
Thank you,
Oliver.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for being good clients.